A laptop disappears from a coffee shop. Not great, but survivable. Then you remember, the same SSH private key was copied to your desktop, your travel laptop, a jump box, and 2 old VMs. That one stolen file now represents every place where that public key is trusted. Today's ssh-keygen tutorial is about avoiding that mess from the start. Create a modern ED25519 key pair. Label it clearly, protect the private key with a passphrase, store it in the right place, and use one key per device. ssh-keygen is the OpenSSH tool that creates and manages SSH key material. For normal login keys, it creates a pair, a private key and a public key. The private key stays on your client machine. The public key is copied to servers you administer, usually into authorized keys for your account. During login, SSH proves possession of the private key without sending the private key across the network. The comment is not security. It is a label for humans, and good labels save time later when you audit keys and wonder which laptop, admin, or automation host created them. For new user keys, ED2559 is the default recommendation on modern OpenSSH systems. It is fast, compact, and widely supported across current Linux and BSD distributions. ssh-keygen writes the private key as IDED2559, and the public half as IDED2559.pub, unless you choose another name. The passphrase encrypts the private key file on disk. Think of it as a second factor for the file. If someone steals the file, they still need the passphrase to use it. It is not a second factor enforced by the server. It protects the private key before SSH ever connects. Walk the card line by line. First, create the .ssh directory if it does not exist. Then, set it to 700, meaning only your user can read, write, and enter it. Now run ssh-keygen-t ed2519-C with a label in quotes. Use something meaningful, like laptop-2026, not just your name forever. When prompted for a file, pressing enter accepts the default .ssh/id_ed2519. When prompted for a passphrase, use one you can type reliably. Finally, lock down the private key to 600. The public key can be world-readable. Here is the pattern I use with administrators. On each workstation, generate a fresh ED25519 key with a label that identifies the device and year, for example, WSAdmin 2026. Accept the default file name unless you have a reason to separate roles. Add only the public key to the servers that admin should access. Never copy the private key to the next machine because it feels convenient. If the workstation is retired, lost, or reassigned, remove that one public key from authorized keys or your central SSH key management source. This keeps incidents small. One device failing should not force emergency rotation across every machine you own. The common mistakes are boring, and that is why they keep causing trouble. First, copying one private key everywhere turns a single lost file into an organization-wide problem. Second, skipping the passphrase makes theft immediately useful if file permissions, backups, or endpoint security fail. Third, never email, chat, or ticket a private key. If it leaves the client, assume it is compromised. Fourth, permissions matter. OpenSSH will often refuse keys that are too open, and even when it does not, loose permissions are a bad habit. Last, remember the comment is visible in the public key. Use operational labels, not secrets. This episode sits at the foundation of almost everything else in SSH administration. After you generate the key pair, the next step is getting the public key onto a server safely, usually with SSH copy ID or configuration management. Then we will talk about authorized keys, how servers decide which keys are accepted, and how to limit what a key can do. Later, SSH Agent will let you unlock a passphrase-protected key once per session instead of typing it constantly. After that comes rotation, replacing keys cleanly when devices age out, staff roles change, or an endpoint might be exposed. 5-minute practice on your own machine or a disposable VM. Create .ssh, set it to 700, and generate an ED25519 key with a label that identifies the device, like lab-vm-2026. Accept the default path if you do not already have a real key there. If you do, stop and use a lab account or a custom file name. Set the private key to 600, then list both files. Open the .pub file and notice that it is one long public key line ending with your comment. Do not install it anywhere yet. Today is only key generation and local hygiene.
Recap in 3 beats.
First, for new OpenSSH user keys, generate ed25519, unless you have a compatibility reason not to. Second, protect the private key with a passphrase and correct permissions. .ssh at 700, private key at 600. Third, use one key per device, so loss, retirement, and rotation stay manageable. In the next Foundation episodes, we will place the public key on a server and read authorized keys like administrators, not guesswork. New SSH Mastery episode daily on this channel, and the daily ranked CVE brief is linked in the description.